Kia ora koutou katoa, e ho ma, no mai, haere mai, ki te papatakaro, StayMe Always. Bring it to your organic, live, and dynamic. Now bring me your cups. Cheers. And let's dip into the healing well. Before we get started, again, I want to address and acknowledge my amazing divergence. We've missed you and me. It's been a couple of days, so we're so glad to be reconnected again and catch up so we can impart all this wonderful experience and knowledge that we have in amongst all of us. How have you been, Unme?
Very busy. I had a little bit of a computer fight. Therefore, now I'm coming to you from a new computer. It's a bit getting used to, the new machine, but it's all good. I've been very well. Thank you, Jamie.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. And then we have the talented, gifted, amazing Mr. Teasy Created. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. StayMe Always. Life is interesting. Like life is a box of chocolates on a roller coaster.
You never know what you're gonna get, right?
Yeah, and you never know when you're gonna go through the dipper or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I suppose too that's a perfect transition, because today what we are going to talk about is what I've called Daggers, and it's all connected to the past shows that we have been talking about centered around relationships. Before we actually enter into that, Unme, you were telling me just previous that you have a project coming up and launching within the next couple of weeks. Do you want to tell us what that's about?
Certainly. It's super interesting because I've been working since January with single ladies and some single men, because they know that I've been working with the single ladies, and usually single ladies and single men goes together, right? And what I've been doing is, so these ladies are all between, let's say, 28 and 48. Now, if you're older than that or younger than that, happy to work with you as well. And they have a problem finding a match. So as you know, 95% of the people nowadays in 2021 find their partner online. And obviously there is a problem. And what I notice is that the intention is not made clear from the beginning. So what I do is I work with these ladies to change their mindset. And basically when they understand themselves, they understand their mindset, and they recognize patterns in their previous behavior with men, and what they allow and what they don't allow, or what they don't do. They, by working with them one-on-one for maybe like 8 weeks, they have great results. So I thought, well, it's sometimes a little bit costly for people to work with me one-on-one. So why not create a program where I teach all of this in I'm still deciding exactly how to organize the logistics, because I'm planning to do it on a Facebook private Facebook group, because we want to keep this like a very sacred and safe container, so not just anyone can come in. And what I will do there is I will share the manifestation process that I applied to attract my partner. And anyone can do that. Anyone. So basically what we do is we heal the past. We look at what did you do in the past that brought you where you are now, and what is the hurdle why you cannot attract the partner. And then I also help people to write their new profile, the new you, your new identity, which is actually your old identity that you didn't know before you started to have problems. And then you go out in the world, and 95% of my ladies are now no longer single. So there we go. Yeah.
That's amazing results. And not that I'm single, but I'm quite, astounded by the numbers, but also interested in terms of the progressional stages, and, you know, what your suggestions are, because ultimately we all have friends out there that are single, and we're trying to match them and set them up and give them, you know, advice that obviously worked for us, but sometimes it's even just taking a slightly different approach. And yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually looking forward to connecting and jumping on board to see exactly what that looks like. And in actual fact, it makes more sense to actually transition into what the show's about today, which I mentioned earlier, Daggers. So being in a level 4 lockdown, apologies, it's now been lifted to level 3 here in New Zealand since Wednesday. Auckland, a section of New Zealand, is still in level 4, but ultimately the rest in the remainder of the country has gone into level 3. There is a transitional change, but people are still feeling, you know, what's the word, as though that they are sheltered, they are still in their own little bubble in their hub. And, you know, we don't know how long it's going to last. There is an end date in terms of the potential of when this level can lift, but it's also looking at the current situation, and relationships are definitely the hot topic and amongst a lot of chats that I've been involved with. And how do you actually withstand and connect and continue to work with your partner that you see 24/7 in your own box? So baggage is obviously something that everybody has, no matter how old you are, and potentially even if you're at the early stages. As life goes by, you will accumulate baggage whether you like it or not. Anmi, I'm going to throw this to you. How do you actually get rid of your old baggage? Where do you start? What do you do?
Well, Jamie, it's for me, and that took me a very long time to learn this, because most people, they get very emotional about their baggage and they regret many things. Now, regret is something I don't have at all, and I learned this through the yoga philosophy. Regret is a bag of bricks that you carry on your back for somebody else. Because you should see every experience as a lesson that has brought you closer to the way that you are today. And you can learn, if you're really honest, you can learn from everything. So how I deal with my past is, it's like Steve Jobs said this: you can only understand the story looking backwards, connecting the dots, but you need to look backwards. So to be honest, I would never be in Australia if I didn't get married to a New Zealand man who was absolutely horrible. And we moved to Japan together. And, you know, then eventually we came here. I mean, I chose to be here because it was halfway between New Zealand and Japan. And then obviously we were never meant to be together, but I decided to stay in Australia because the weather was favorable for my back injury. And I always knew that I was not going to live in Europe. So everything happens for a reason. And then between, you know, my ex-husband and my husband now, I had several relationships that was not what I wanted, and I've learned from them. And yes, sometimes I really thought, you know, like I've wasted time, and I you know, like you can see that as a regret, but I also see that as a lesson of, you know, like, wow, I had no idea that really existed. So how to overcome that is very simple, but you need to be ready for that, is make the decision. You need to make the decision. It's time to look forward and not look backwards. And if you look backwards, see it as the lessons that you have learned from that situation instead of looking at the negatives. I know that's a very simplistic answer, but that's the answer.
And you know what? It makes absolute sense. I apply exactly what you're saying with any relationship, whether it's in an intimate, you know, partner relationship, or whether it's with a friend or even a family member, because ultimately it doesn't really matter what type of relationship, because ultimately you're going to have baggage at various different points of your entire life. And regardless of whether it was what type of relationship, that baggage can also come into play at various different stages with different people. Teasy, what's great about obviously us being on the show is that, and having you on board is, your experience, your knowledge, your mindset, and obviously from a male's perspective, it's always potentially going to look possibly different. So why don't you give us a spin in terms of, what that means for you when, you've got experiences with having baggage, and, how do you move forward? What sort of suggestions can you make from that male's perspective?
Yeah, I think, and I can only speak for me, because ultimately we can look around us and we can make assumptions that people are going through the same thing as us. But really, our experiences are as unique as our fingerprints, because our experiences are colored, and I'm going to go back to this again, from when we're children, from 0 to 7 years old. And then that sets the pattern for our psychology, and then that's how we approach life. And predominantly, the theme that is set in our infancy, the psychology of our infancy, is how we're going to deal with life, because we're trusting these adults who are around us, or people that we perceive to be guardians of ourselves. We're trusting that their knowledge is going to set us up for the future. Unfortunately, that is not always the case. And more often than not, as you see society and the shape that it's in today, you could probably guarantee, without begging anybody that raised me or either of you two, they do what they think is best at the time. But is it really the best thing for us at the time? And so it's not about questioning their intentions, because it always comes back to intentions, because they're obviously our parents or our guardians, whoever raised us, their intentions were always good, but the manner or the method in which they undertake raising us, some of those notions and thoughts and the ethoses that they how they carry them, that condition them to carry themselves, some of them are not accurate, and then we get that drummed into us, and then we do the same thing. So it's a perpetual cycle, and then we teach our kids, then they'll teach their kids. And I think what we really have to focus on, especially on the show when we're delivering information, is the accuracy of information, and then trying to open people's minds up to possibilities, especially where it comes to psychology, because the heart is connected to the mind. And I just wanted to read this ancient manuscript here, where it says, it's talking about the renewal of your mind. It says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So regardless of whether we're taught particular things that actually don't advantage us as we're growing up, and ultimately wisdom is justified by its fruits. So the things that you're taught, if they're legit, because they'll yield the fruit, they'll yield the result, the good results. And so anything that we've been taught as we're growing up, if it's not yielding the results, then we need to relook at that and then start asking the question, is this information actually legit? Is it tika, or is it not? Is it tickle?
Love that. Love that comparison. But you make some valid points, and thinking about exactly what you said, again, it's going back to your past and how you were brought up. It's your value system and your morals at the end of the day, because ultimately, as much as I can say it's simple, because I've always tried to make decisions based on circumstances at that point in time, and I'm constantly thinking of ways to improve not only myself, but help different people and circumstances, and that the cycle doesn't have to continue, but you have to make, as Unme alluded to and said before, you've got to make a decision to actually then stop, and then put in place what's necessary so that you can move on. All week I've been talking about momentum brushes and different ways and tools in terms of how to cope with different stresses of life, circumstances, partners, relationships with people, so that you can manage on a day-to-day basis, because ultimately it's every single day that you're faced with that can potentially be the challenge and affect you long term. Anne-May, what sort of like things can you do, and what sort of resources can you tap into and suggestions? And look, whether it's 1, 2, 5, 10, it doesn't matter. But what suggestions can you make to help people to be able to actually stop and assess, or even just realize that I need to move on, but what are the things that they can do and use to help them to move on?
I would definitely say visualization. Visualization, because there is a technique that I use in the morning when I wake up. It's only 12 minutes. I'm not sure if I ever talked about it in the show. To move on with your life, not to get dragged into the past again, is priming. And priming is basically a technique that I've learned from Tony Robbins. And it first, when you wake up, you're like a little bit still sleepy. And then you need to kind of like get your body moving. But of course, when you just wake up, you don't want to go and do aerobics. So what you do is, I'll quickly demonstrate that. So you put your hands up and then you push down. And then with every push, so the hands are up above your head, stretched out, and then it's like you're holding onto a branch, and then you breathe out really quickly. So you do that 10 times, like, and by doing that breathing technique and the movement with your arms, you're going to feel the blood flowing in your body, regardless of what your BMI is. And you do that, you take a rest for like maybe 3 seconds, between 3 to 5 seconds between 10 set of 10. So you do that 30 times. And then when you put your hands on your lap, you're going to feel some tingling in your hands, because obviously the blood flow is going, and you need that to change your state. Yeah, so it doesn't really mean you need to do that in the morning. You can do that at any time, but you need to change your state. And this is a very good exercise when you are, you're very emotional, you're very, sad. It changes your state. Your physiology changes your state. And then you close your eyes, and then you focus and you bring from the past, you bring 3 things, positive things. Yeah, we don't go to the negative. We look at the positive emotions that we have experienced. 3 things that you just go like, wow, that was an amazing time. Might have been the birth of a child, might have been, I don't know, when you're in Greece or in Fiji, that's probably more likely for Australia and New Zealand, on the beach, and you thought, wow, this is absolutely beautiful. So you bring these experiences and the feelings that you had, you bring that to the now. And it is things you were grateful for, right? So, and then once you have brought these feelings and these clips of life into the now you're going to visualize what you want your life to be like. And you put 3 things that you visualize, and you take a moment, maybe like a minute per thing that you want to experience. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it, gives you butterflies in your tummy? So for the single people, I would say, visualize yourself with your perfect partner, walking hand in hand on the beach, for example. What are you going to talk about? What breakfast you're going to eat together? How is it going to, what is being with this person going to be like? Not only because many people say, my perfect partner needs to look like this and this and this. But how are you going to have your first argument? What are you cooking together? What food do you enjoy together? Oh, I never thought about it. Well, that's kind of important, isn't it? Because that's called life, not what he looks like or she looks like. So, and then visualize these 3 things. And that's basically in short how it works. But in between, sorry, I forgot one part of the visualization. So first you go to the past, you get these 3 feelings of really, really good feeling, and then you ground yourself. So you imagine your feet on the floor and you grow roots into the earth. And then you have like, you extract the energy out of the earth coming through your, you know, the roots into your feet, into your legs, through your body, into your head, out into the sky, and then coming back in. And you do that a couple of times. So it's like renewing of the cells. And then you go into the visualization of the future, how you want to experience your future. So that's what I do, and that it's amazing. If you do that for 30 days, I can guarantee your life will be different.
You know what, as I just said, I've been talking about momentum brushes and utilizing my own experiences and what I've done in the past, now, and hope, and also in the future, to help people to understand how to become calm, especially when they're in what I've called a HEAS environment, a heightened emotional state. And I like the fact that you mentioned, and I was actually looking here and writing things down, because this is such a great exercise that I'm actually going to try myself, but it's actually getting yourself into that state. And I know a couple of things that, in one suggestion I was making is just to literally take the time, but in order for you to do and actually take that time to be able to get yourself into a calm and rational state, is actually recognizing it from the start and actually pulling yourself and detaching yourself away from what is ever that you're doing, in order to get into that state where you can become calm, think rationally, and then obviously start moving forward. But this is such a great idea. I'm definitely going to trial it, and then obviously give some feedback and share it with all of our viewers. Teasy, for you, what sort of recommendations can you offer to the audience in terms of things that you can do to kind of help you to move forward or transition onto that next stage or that next part of your relationship?
So I spoke in the previous question about intentions. I think it's really important to state your intentions before you actually start talking about anything. So then if there arises in your thoughts from baggage, you're just doing what the last guy did, or you're just doing what my last girlfriend did, or you're just doing what my last friend did. Because this is what we have to remember. There are anomalies, and some people are just different. They actually are. And so what we have to remember is that, yep, I've been through this before with multiple people, irrespective and regardless of the capacity of the relationship. But we live in a world of 7 billion people. And so that should tell you what the possibilities are, full stop. Just because you've been with Tom, Dick, Joe, and Harry, or someone's been with Millie, Jane, Esther, and Florence, there's 7 billion people in the world. And so don't let other people color your future possibilities, because there's a possibility that someone could buck all of those trends, or even a billion people could buck all of those trends. So we really have to focus on what are the possibilities. Yes, there's a possibility that this is happening or this could happen, but there's also a possibility that someone could trump all of those things. And so that's what I like to call a ketone. That's a ketone into the what is it? Optimistic doorway of future possibilities. So I just gave you another quip. A ketone into the optimistic possibilities of doorways that can actually eventuate. It doesn't always have to be the doom and gloom of the past, because as I'll say, and I'll keep going back to it, there are 7+ billion people in the world. They can't all be like that.
Man, I hope not. And it's good that you brought up the fact about intentions, because I even myself in the past, as much as I thought in my past relationships I was quite clear about my intentions, when I actually reflect back, ultimately the intention was too broad. It was never specific and absolutely open to interpretation. And like you were saying, and me, with your project that you're focusing on, you alluded to the fact that, yeah, absolutely, it's about stating your intentions right from the outset, because ultimately people just don't do that. There's also the flip side. When you state your intentions, it's like all of a sudden, boom, you're hitting a brick wall and you're like, wow, I don't even actually know how to handle what you're saying right now, because it's quite upfront and quite confronting. And this also leads on to something that a lot of people actually don't really sit and think about. But ultimately, as much as you may think you've moved on, and you may think that you have worked through the baggage and the trauma of whatever happened in your last relationships, but not realizing it's actually coming and entering into your new relationship, is the psychology behind, understanding your partner. This is massive, and this is probably going to be a big area to talk about. Where do you start to even think about understanding your partner's psychology to then mold and shape how you actually deal with them? Where do you start? What do you do?
Well, it's an excellent question, because as a Belgian living in Australia, being married to a Brazilian, and many people are like, what? Who is also substantially younger than I am. My first thing what I want to say to people is, don't ever get into a stereotype thinking. And TZ, I completely agree with you, because I say that a lot to my clients. If you want a different life, you need to start thinking differently. I think Einstein said that as well. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and you expect a different result, you're a fool. If you want a different result, you need to do something differently. So going back to the question, as in, if you want a different relationship, so you've been in a certain type of relationships and you want something different, you need to be the change you want to see. And I know I'm quoting many famous people here now, but that is what we are working on in my program. So we don't necessarily work on the partner, we work on you, because your energy will attract the partner. So my mom, coming back to your question, Jamie, because it's many different things we need to address here. My mom said, well, if you date somebody from your own country, you are, you're one step closer to make things work. Well, I don't agree, because it's all about energetics. And yes, if you marry a different culture or a person from a different country, there is more variables that can be misunderstood. But that's why you need to make sure, and I will always come back to this, and this is one very big topic in the course that I'm teaching, values. Because there are people if you take all the different countries in the world, there will be people who are educated or not necessarily educated, because once you are in a family setting, you obviously adopt many values from what you've seen between 0 and 7, and the lead that your parents took, and the guidance, and the role models that you have seen in your life. However, I also think if you've seen dysfunctional behavior in a family setting, many people say, I am never gonna do that. So I think there is this beautiful story of a father with two sons, and one son says, I'm an alcoholic because my father was, and the other one says, I don't drink alcohol because my father did. So you always have two choices, right? So, but you will find people all over the world that have similar values to yours. And it's just coming back to intention again. You need to have the guts to put your list of values on the table and have the integrity to stand by what your values are, and not change your identity to please the other. And that's where things go wrong. I see many people, they meet somebody that looks like, wow, this is the man from the picture or the woman from the picture, and they just look at it's true, right? So they see this, like the outside.
Yep,
and
yep.
And but yes, see, I see this all the time, and I think, what are you doing? And then when you put the values together, there is not even a close match. There is maybe only 5% of the values that are the same. And let me tell you, it's never gonna work. Never. Unless somebody sacrifices their identity to, and let me tell you, it can work for 1 year, 2 years, maybe 5 years. And then it's going to result in either a disease or a divorce. Because you can never play a role for that long, which is not your identity or who you truly are. So my advice, it keeps always coming back to the same. Put your cards on the table when you meet somebody. The picture might be beautiful to look at, and that's maybe what you want. You think, right? Because this is your instinct, kind of like your animal instinct talking. But on the long term, this is never going to work. Values, if they are the same and you are working towards the same thing and you have the same expectations is the wrong word, but the same goals in a relationship, that's how you're going to make something work.
Yeah. Hallelujah. That's all I'm going to say, because I've been there. I've been in a relationship where it didn't happen overnight, but time took its course. And yeah, I lost my identity, and I realized that by the point and the time that I had been in that relationship, I didn't even know who I was. And ultimately, a lot of people know exactly what I'm saying, but it's actually understanding and coming to that realization sooner rather than later. And that's probably the hard part, because ultimately you're in the relationship for a particular reason, and ultimately it's because you see yourself being with that individual. There were qualities that you saw right from the outset. You love them, you want to be with them, but Unme, at what point do you actually then have to realize that this isn't going to work? What are those kind of signals, besides stating the obvious? What are those kind of signals and signs that you can kind of impart to kind of help those people that may be in a relationship like that right now, where they've totally lost their identity, but they're sitting there going, but what do you mean? Like, I'm still the same person, but deep down inside, they know they're not that same person.
Well, the red flags are there because in my first marriage, I think we were together for maybe 4 months, and then he was leaving to go overseas for a posting. And I had given him this beautiful, because I was modeling when I was younger, and a black and white picture, like a poster. And he just took it off the wall and he said, "Do you want this or I chuck it?" And I was like, okay, now I would have said, "I'll have it, thanks, and please don't call me again." Because if you are going overseas and you don't even want to take a beautiful picture of your, fiance or whatever, girlfriend, where is the, like, where is the care? Where is the, in a relationship, and I will say this, the feeling that you need to have to really feel comfortable with yourself and that person and the person with you is when you walk into a room of people. And I always imagine, like, the Golden Globes or something. Everyone's dressed up, everyone's beautiful. You walk into that room of beautiful people and you see there is the man or the woman that you share your life with. You are proud and you don't even have eyes for anyone else. That's the feeling you have to have. That is true love and admiration, that you feel, oh, I am so lucky, And if you don't have that feeling that you are lucky to be with that person, and I don't mean he pays your bills or he buys you a Bentley or, he gives you a credit card you can go and do your hair. No, what I'm talking about is a person that is tired, that comes home and said, "Here, I brought us some food because I know that you're tired too, and now we can maybe sit together. Let's put the phones away, let's light a candle, and let's have a deep and meaningful conversation." That is admiration. That is sharing moments. That is things you will never forget in your life. So if you cannot be who you truly are with that person, and you cannot put any topic on the table, run or plan an escape, because it's not healthy, this situation. Yeah.
No, some really good points, and I know we've spoken on previous shows all about, you know, your senses and intuition, and ultimately we all know when you have that gut feeling, you know what's potentially right or wrong, and sometimes I suppose it is hard for people to run and escape because of the circumstance, but ultimately you know what those warning signs are. Teasy, for you, you know, in your experience, you know, what helps you to understand your partner's psychology so that it becomes, you know, easier for yourself, but also to help your partner understand that that's actually what you're trying to do, is just support and assist them and help them.
Yeah. Look, psychology is inextricably connected to emotions, because what the mind receives conditions the heart. And so that's what's happening to you when you're in any relationship or any situation where you're dealing with people. And so depending on how people treat you or act toward you, and your previous social conditioning on those particular actions, tones, body language, even gesticulations, the way you use gesticulations as emphasizes when you're speaking, they can all tell you the wrong story. And so what you really have to do is you have to sit down and talk with each other and understand what each other actually means, by gesticulations, by tones, even right down to the words themselves. Because a lot of people, and I'll say this again, you can be talking the same language, using exactly the same words, but if you don't have exactly the same definition of each individual word, you're actually speaking two totally different stories, and people take that for granted. And so it just comes back to psychology. And ultimately, if someone cherishes you and adores you and loves you, they will want to know everything, and so that they can understand you. Because if they understand you, and if the reciprocity is there for your partner to understand you, so it's like your momentum brushes, you know, it's momentum givers, momentum receivers, and then the things that you do together, momentum brushes. I think you call them, what is it? Is it it's me love, the momentum brushes that you do for yourself. Then it's you love, the momentum brushes that you do for your partner. And then it's we love, the things that we do together. I think that's absolutely amazing stuff. And so, yeah, ultimately, if someone wants to show you that they love you, then they'll show you in every single possible way. There will be no excuses, and they will leave no stone unturned. They will try every single thing. And that's the intention. Now, whether that's interpreted like that is another story. But again, if someone's willing to sit down and work with you to find out the deeper things, the deeper meanings of the psychology behind, if you have baggage, and everybody has baggage, I think the older you get, the more baggage you have. But it's actually finding someone who's willing to sit down and try and put in the effort to understand you. Those are the kinds of people that you want around you.
Mm. And Unme, for you, I know, and I'm unfortunately, this is something that I've always done with a lot of my past relationships, and in relationships, is that I actually don't want to hear the truth, and I'm not prepared at that point because I don't know what it is. A lot of people just don't want to hear the truth, but they're also not ready to actually sit and, maybe like what you were saying, Teasy, and sit and actually have that conversation, because it is confronting. It does mean that you actually then have to relook at how you operate, who you are, because ultimately at the end of the day, we all think that we do things out of love, because it's we're giving everybody the best that we can give. But then to reflect and actually look at yourself, sometimes that can be quite hard. You know, the recommendation I've done, in terms of a couple of momentum brushes that I've spoken about today, is to actually remove yourself from the situation so that you can get yourself, as you mentioned, into that state of calmness, rationality, to then start thinking straight, to then put a bit of an understanding or an idea or a plan in place to then move forward, to then have the appropriate conversation. But what suggestions can you give people when they're just so wound up and frustration or anger or anxiety that they just can't move past it, and they're not prepared or ready to actually acknowledge what's happening?
Excellent question. Well, what I would say as a tip number one is do not raise your voice, because my dad told me this when I was very young. He said, when you are in an argument and you need to raise your voice, you have already lost your argument.
Mm.
And I thought that's a very wise thing, because it's not good for the vibes. You don't attract good vibes when you are screaming and yelling. Secondly, there might be children that can maybe not see you, but probably hear you, and that's not the example you want to set. Thirdly, I would say if you can't keep it together, I would leave the room or leave the space calmly. There will be no throwing of doors, or that's not good for the door, because that costs money if things break. And also, a hand can catch between the doors, so you can do serious injuries. Yeah. So go outside, go for a walk, and then reflect. How important on a scale from 0 to 10 is this argument? Because I believe it's Dr. Phil who said, if you are fighting about everything, you are fighting about nothing. But if, it scores higher than a 6 on a scale from 0 to 10, I would say you need to make an appointment, just like you go and see a psychologist or a doctor or a specialist. You make an appointment with the other party and you say, okay, let's have a glass of fizzy water with chips. Let's sit down, or whatever, berries if you want to do very super healthy. And you say, and each person has the right to make an agenda of things that need to be addressed. And actually, a healthy couple should do that. When I text my husband and I say we need to talk, he's not like, uh-oh, I'm in the doghouse. No, he knows, like, okay, we need to work on something. And it's so important to do that on a regular basis. What I see with my clients is they let things escalate and they just zip the lip. Let's just not say anything. And then obviously, if there is too many things coming their way, as in that they don't talk about, there's going to be an explosion, and that's how you end up with like the possible screaming match. But if you work through things on a regular basis, and you are in the car, for example, you're driving, didn't like that, this needs to be addressed, put it on the table. I do that. I sometimes pull over and I write, yeah, what's up? Hello, we need to talk. Smiling. And then in the evening, what did you want to talk about? So because it's not only one person always insinuating, I want to talk, the other person also needs to acknowledge, I have received a message from you. What do you want to talk about? Right? So that's called a relationship. And it's like, the hand in glove, it goes together. So that's my advice. And then obviously some things have escalated too far. And then I would say, because I think that's what you suggested, Jamie, when do you seek help? Usually, if most relationships are so broken down and completely deteriorated that once they seek help, there is no more fixing. But if you really want to, obviously, because it's usually one party that has already completely detached when they go to counseling, specifically psychologists, right? But that's my first question when I ask when I see a couple. Then I say, I speak to them separately and I say, do you want to fix this? Honestly, do you want to fix this? And sometimes people say, no. I say, okay, I'm not charging you anything. I think you should just go now and sort things out and maybe call a lawyer. Because there is really no point in me, you need to book in for 12 sessions and things that are broken. Like there is a saying, I think I once read this on Instagram or Facebook. If I take a beautiful Versace plate, and I smash it to the floor, and I collect all the 3,579 pieces, and I glue it together with the most complicated engineer, is it going to be the same plate? It's never going to be the same plate. So You need to know that if damage has been done, sometimes there is no fixing it, but it's a decision from both parties. Are you willing to fix this? And if the answer of both parties is yes, we say, all right, let's sit down and work on this and let's, look at different angles. But most of the time when things escalate so badly that people go to see a counselor, it's beyond fixing. And then you need to have the integrity and the honesty to say that instead of continuing on, because I see some people continuing on 2 years, 3 years in a relationship that's broken. That's so unhealthy for all parties involved, man, woman, 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 children, regardless of how the constitution is, the construction of the family is. So you need to have the honesty to say, look, I don't think this is fixable. We need to move on. Where do we move from here? I think honesty is an intention. It all comes down. What is your intention of going to see the counselor? Is it to fix your relationship or is it to waste more time?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, we keep coming back to, the same points over and over, but obviously dealing with it at different various stages. But again, you're absolutely right, intentions is very important. And obviously, TZ, with yourself, any other suggestions in terms of your recommendations around seeking help, or in terms of how to get past a particular point in your relationship with your partner?
Yeah, I think you need to be proactively preemptive, and don't get into a relationship just because, people choose too often with the eyes. Way too often, man. They choose with the eyes, and like you've both echoed in the show, and that's the biggest problem. People choose with their eyes. What you actually got to do is look at a person's soul, and you actually got to look at their fruits. What are they doing? What are they doing? Because people say one thing, but their actions say another. And so, if the actions aren't lining up with what they're telling you, well, then there's something inherently wrong. And I just want to read this. And this is talking about the fruits. So I always go back to kingdom things, to kingdom standards, which are higher than this world standards. And I ponder on these. I meditate on scripture because I want it to fill me, so that I act like this towards people. And the problem is that most people, they don't know these principles, and so they just follow whoever's. Most people are followers; they're not leaders, and so they just follow anybody they think has a good heart. But more often than not, those people don't even know what they're doing either. And so then, this is the old saying: if the blind leads the blind, then both will fall into a pit. And so just coming back to, so this is from Galatians 5, and it talks about the fruits of the Spirit. And it says here in verse 22, but the fruit of the Spirit, because we're talking about spiritual things here, about the sixth sense and how we connect to the spiritual realm. All these things come from the spiritual realm. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And then it goes on to say, against these things, there is no law. And I think that the reason why we're seeing so much problems in relationships, regardless of the capacity all around the world, is because you're seeing none of these fruits. You're seeing selfishness. You're seeing people who do not care how they treat people. You're seeing people who always have their own agenda and only out to serve their own agenda, and they use people to serve that agenda. And then, you're just seeing all the wrong fruits. And the worst thing about that is that when people get into relationships, and because they've made their choice with their eyes, and they've already aligned their hearts with a person, but the fruits of that person are giving you all the red flags, so to speak. But you stay because you hope that they'll change, and the reality is that they are never going to change. Why? Because it's been ingrained in them from when they were children, and further entrenched by bad teachings from people that they followed.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, again, I'm always going to say this, we never have enough time to talk even more. We could talk and talk and talk to you and everybody in the audience, to try and, you know, continue on to help everyone. But before I just want to wrap it up, and me, I'm going to throw this back to you. You know, how do you, when is that point that you accept that that person may not be able to change? And ultimately, there's so many different scenarios that can be attached to that question. But do you actually accept it, or do you not? And how do you know which way to go at what point? Which decision?
Okay, I just wanted to say something, because this is relating to what TZ said as well. I see a lot of like time wasting and people wasting each other's time, not having the right intention and stringing people along. And this can be men and women stringing each other along in a relationship that's going absolutely nowhere. And I will come to the question that you asked, when is the final straw? But what I want to say, and actually this is the strangest thing because I did a live on it this morning about intentions, and I was like, oh my God, I hear the same words that I have used. This is crazy, and I haven't even spoken to you guys. But some people might notice that are watching this, that I studied the yoga philosophy in Thailand for 12 years. And it's a very beautiful philosophy because it goes much deeper, and it's very ancient, much deeper than the mainstream thinking. And rule number one in the yoga philosophy is do not commit violence. That's obvious, yeah, not even a violent thought. Rule number two is do not steal. And I think everyone understands that's quite obvious, that's not the right thing to do. So, but in the West, we see this as don't steal somebody's phone, yeah, or somebody's pen. But yeah, physical things. And but they go much deeper into it. They say do not steal somebody's time. Because if you need to buy another pen or another phone, you take your purse, you go to Apple or like whatever shop you want to buy a phone, you pay with your credit card, boom, you have another one, yeah? But time, you will never, ever get back. And if you take people's time, knowingly with the intention, I mean, intentionally you're using their time, knowing this is not the right partner for you, that is really bad vibes, guys, really bad vibes. So when do you know that the last straw is the last straw? Well, that all comes down with, you need to ask yourself the question, am I happy? Am I going to get happier? And how long am I willing to tolerate this behavior? Because basically the behavior we tolerate and we accept is going to persist. And that is something really, and exactly what you said, TZ, before, if things are bad, and it is due to external circumstances, like it might be, I don't know, you might have less money, but you can see from, I don't know, 1st of November, we're going to be back on the normal money. It's just a difficult period. Okay, you can bridge that. But if you have the tunnel and you see no light at the end of the tunnel, let me tell you, 9 out of 10 or 99.99% is not going to get better. You need to make a move. You need to make a move. Nobody's going to make the move for you. So if you ask yourself the question, am I happy? Am I going to be happier soon? And if the answer is no, time to look at an exit. And with an exit, I don't mean run away. Put your cards on the table, say, I'm not happy because X, Y, Z. How do you suggest we solve this problem? I see it this way, and this way. How do you see it? How can we put these two visions together? And sometimes splitting up is the very best thing you can do. really, for yourself, for the children, for the circumstances, because remember, your children, they see you as a role model. Whatever you're gonna model, whatever energy that you are involving them in, they feel things. They know when there is no money. They know when there is no love. They know, but you don't need to tell them that. They can feel that. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Anmi. Adults think children are stupid, but they are not, man, because they have no filters. So they're taking in all the information without any filters. And I totally agree with you on the time thing. You know, time is our biggest commodity. It's priceless because once it's gone, we can't get it back. And so I've never let anybody waste my time. And I certainly don't go out to waste other people's time. So that's why I always state my intentions. And with my current partner now, I think I stated my intentions from the start, how I viewed her and what I wanted. And I think somewhere early in the piece, I even asked her if she wanted to have kids, you know, so, and then obviously with kids comes marriage and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so hopefully I made my intentions well noted from the start. But yeah, time, don't let people waste your time, because once it's gone, you cannot get it back. And if people's actions aren't lining up with their spoken intentions, well then because intentions are always followed by actions. And so anybody who has any integrity and actually cares about your time, they'll manner up, they'll front up, and they'll deliver to you what they said their intentions were. There's a lot of guys and females too, but you know, predominantly males who just waste women's time and think nothing of it. And it's a culture. It's culturally accepted, and guys sit around and they laugh about it and they think it's funny, and it just makes it even harder for, you know, legit guys like myself.
But women have to speak up as well. And that is something that I'm teaching these women in the course. People like, but you know, like there is this desperado kind of like, you know, oh my God, I have a match. Yep, okay, well, let's assess. Like it's like a packet of biscuits, right? Let's try the biscuit. No, not really what I want. Okay, that's not what I'm gonna buy. It's exactly like that. So you cannot get desperate that this is the last biscuit you're ever gonna eat. You know, you need to see, are my values aligned? You still need to go through the checklist of what you have set out for yourself. So women need to learn to put boundaries. When women put boundaries, men will follow, because there will not be this playing around, because they will just get, you know, slapped. I mean, without being physical, okay?
Absolutely, Unmi, absolutely. And you know what? Everything that you both have mentioned, I look back and I go, I've been that female that has literally just shut down and put up with it, you know, week after month after year. And I've been in long-term relationships where I knew, you know, 5 years in and then 5 years later and made the decision to move on, that I should have exited, you know, that transaction a long time ago. But, you know, I'm so glad that you brought that to the forefront, because ultimately you have to be honest with yourself. And that is actually what makes the decision that much harder, because you actually, in my case, I never wanted to hurt anybody's feelings. I never wanted them to feel as though they weren't loved and they weren't wanted, because ultimately that's why I was in that relationship. But I was too scared to actually state the truth. And by that point, it was too far gone. And then, as you stated, you know, you don't want to talk to somebody at a raised voice where there was yelling and there was screaming and there was other things that happened, obviously, that I don't want to mention. But it was the fact that, you know, if I was just honest with myself right from the get-go, as you both stated those intentions. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with trying the damn biscuit. Like, try it. If you don't like it, move on. There's nothing wrong with that, because, as you said, and I actually did a Momentum Brush segment today, which I'm going to post. I was also talking about time, because time just goes so fast. Unfortunately, we don't have a magic pill. We don't have a time machine. We can't go back. We can't bring time forward. We can't go back in time. So ultimately, you're right. Don't waste people's time, because you know, you're going to regret everything that you did, and the relationships, and potentially you know, ruin people that do actually love you when you weren't in it for love to start with. So
and with trying the biscuit, I do not mean sleep with the man.
Oh,
It is no. It is interview, talk as much as you can, get as much information, but in person. And now with COVID, that you can't go and let's just meet in a coffee shop. Do a face-to-face, do a FaceTime, because you get the vibe of the person. Is this somebody you want to meet, right? So get as much information and try to put your values together. And if they don't function, don't change them. Like, I've seen this happen. People meet someone and then their values are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of a sudden they have like 78, 95. Where did this come from? Like, what's that? And I said, you're lying to yourself. And this is exactly what you said, Jamie, is like, be honest to yourself, because that's the slogan of my company, Accountability Expert. Lying to yourself. If you want to be successful, don't lie to yourself. Be honest. And it's super hard sometimes. And in conclusion, and then I will really be zipping the lip, it is, if you want to answer your question, like, in conclusion, how do you know when you need to go? If you are no longer growing together, you need to go.
yeah. All right. And you know what? We're going to end it there, because I think that was such a valid point in conclusion. And you know what? Thank you to you both. Today's session has been absolutely amazing. I've been on this earth long enough, and as much as we all like to think we know everything, I'm constantly learning different things every single day from different, you know, backgrounds, perceptions, and you know, I know our audiences absolutely love the information that you've both delivered today. So thank you, absolutely, you know, so much. It's been awesome. Look, before we actually end it, I know, Teaser, you've got your website that is up and running, and your social for PlayUps is going to be entering the realm shortly.
Yep. So currently making some Delta variant protection masks that I'm going to be selling from Amazon, but via my website. All those links will go into the bottom of our shows. Look, this Healing Well thing is going to transform lives, because the information that comes out of, especially you two, because I feel like I'm just your sidekicks, and I feel like that you both are the catalysts. And I'm really just the trailer, man. You know, you guys are this big lorry, and I'm just like this little tugboat on the back, just catching a ride, really. And so, you know, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to you both, especially to you, Jamie, for everything that you do for me. And then once you entered the fray with the show, Anmi, the things that I've gleaned from you and that I apply to myself, like, I used to think that I needed to help my partner change her perception of me, but I also have to change the way that I deliver my communication as well, and so that goes both ways. And these are all just little things that they call the 1%ers. And so, you know, if you really want to contribute magnanimously and conducively to your partner and your relationship, you're constantly changing, you're constantly growing. And like you said before, if you're seeing no growth, if you're not continually growing together, then it's not going to happen. And so I'm all about growth.
Absolutely agree. Beautiful, beautiful. And it's communication is key, but what people don't understand is that in a relationship, the hardest the first 2 years are probably the hardest, because you do the most communication, you get to know each other, you know each other's buttons, and instead of using that against each other, be empathetic and go, oh wow, like that's I'm really humbled that I get this information, because certain people some people keep information forever inside their heart, which is absolutely shocking, you know. I sit. So yeah, hey Linksy, you're on the show. Yeah. But yes, communication is key, and the more you communicate, the smoother your relationship is going to be.
No, definitely. Well, thank you two so much for the show. As usual, jump on StayMe Always, The Healing Well, on YouTube. If you have any questions or queries, if you know anybody that needs assistance in terms of relationships or advice just in general, send them our link, send them our show, and get them to get in contact with us. Love that. From me to you both.
We
Have
love.
an amazing evening, and like I said, if you've got any questions or queries, feel free to jump on our social, and we'd be more than happy to accommodate and assist. Have an amazing evening, and we'll chat soon.
Adios, amigas.
Bye bye. Au revoir.